after suffering another blow to the head with Goldberg's spear through the cage, smashing his head on the steel barricade to add to his concussion last Monday. Vince Russo was set to write himself off TV in the last Nitro in its original scheduling taping, with the talent roster and production crew set to fly to Australia for the next 2 weeks while starting to shoot Thunder immediately following Nitro when coming back to the US on October 23. While in the meantime rumors on the potential sale of the company to a group headed by Eric Bischoff were heating up, including first public comments by Hulk Hogan after months which saw him suing Russo and the company, saying in a radio interview that based on several phone calls he got the deal is close to be done and should be announced soon, with Russo in a statement addressing the events of the past week saying that he proved he can win the WCW title and is now relinquishing it with a match between Steiner and Jarrett for the belt set for the main event, turning to Goldberg to bring him out to the ring, with Russo driving out in a protected glass saying that Goldberg's fate is in his hands after spearing him last week, announcing that starting tonight Goldberg will be fired on his first loss unless he repeats his 176-win undefeated streak, bringing out Megas Goldberg's first opponent, with the Russo-Goldberg segment in Russo's final segment on Nitro gaining over 700,000 viewers to what ended up the peak of the night 3.3 rating. In a segment that ended up playing off the legit situation going on behind the scenes, Russo put Mike Sanders in charge of the show as the on-screen authority figure to replace him in the role, as with the rumored ownership change and morale in the locker room said to be up across the board, including WCW Internet supervisor Bob Ryder saying that morale under the current Russo regime is the highest it's ever been since he was involved in the company. Conan organized a petition which the vast majority of the talent roster signed in support of Russo due to more new names getting opportunity to get over on TV, with Russo, who is scheduled to be on the Australia tour as the head writer and one of the main TV performers, notified Brad Siegel that due to his head injuries he won't go on the tour but instead help write the TV shows from home and fax it to the crew overseas, with Nitro's final quarter seeing the Goldberg vs. Meng match placed just before the top of the hour, with Goldberg going over for his first win in the new streak. Nitro, which had noticeably more in-ring wrestling on the night, including a rare situation of 2 matches going past the 10-minute mark on the same program, opened the first head-to-head quarter with the Steiner and Sting vs. Booker and Jarrett #1 contender tag match to set up the main event, going 11 minutes with Jarrett and Booker going over to book them against each other for the belt in half an hour, doing a 2.3 opening quarter rating. Raw, on its second TNN show after breaking all network viewership records last Monday, opened with Rock coming out for a promo in front of over 17,000 at the MCI Center in Washington to start the build to the No Mercy pay-per-view, calling out Kurt Angle after being pinned by him last Thursday, while bringing up new Olympic gold medal winner Roland Gardner, coming after Gardner won the gold by beating the top wrestler in the world in Alexander Caroline in one of the biggest upsets in amateur wrestling history, with the company at one point looking to bring Gardner in to work an angle with Kurt and perhaps get involved in the build-up for the upcoming Rock vs. Angle feud, bringing out Angle for the response saying that Gardner didn't beat the top wrestler as he was not in the Olympics, closing the first quarter opening with a 4.4 rating, with Mick Foley followed by Triple H coming out wanting a shot against Rock for the title. Nitro's second quarter going against the Big Star Power promo segment on Raw saw an originally scheduled Skipper vs. Sanders Cruiserweight title match being turned by Sanders into an handicap match with Nash as his partner, ending up with Nash cutting a promo throughout the match before laying out Skipper to bring another belt to the Thrillers group, while Raw's opening segment ended up one of the longest in show history with Chris Benoit and Kane coming out next wanting title shots against Rock, followed by Rikishi to set up the two top matches for tonight with Rock and Rikishi vs. Kane and Benoit, and a number one contender match for No Mercy with Angle vs. Hunter in the main event, leading to Raw jumping over 1.3 million viewers throughout the segment to a 5.3 rating. As with the hyped Raw last week ending up the most watched show in TNN history with over 7.1 million viewers, TNN's president commented on the WWF surpassing their initial expectations, with the network expected around a 5 rating for the debut show, while Raw ended up drawing a 5.4, saying that Raw not only drew the huge audience for its own 2 hours but also lifted the show's leading to 9 p.m. to draw double its usual viewership, while responding to ECW staying on the network after months of their last show was set for September 22nd, saying that ECW would remain on TNN through October 6 after Vince McMahon signed a waiver to allow them to stay until finding a new cable TV home. After going over Meng to restart the streak, Goldberg was back out for his second match of the night, going over the Harris brothers in a quick handicap match to end the show with 3 wins on the way to 176, with the rest of the quarter seeing the payoff of David Flair's search for the father, with Buff Bagwell being revealed under the mask to make his TV return, laying out Flair, with Raw against it having 2 tag matches in the quarter, first with a Hardys vs. Too Cool tag titles match going 4 minutes with the Hardys retaining after Edge and Christian's interference, followed by Ravens and Ring Raw debut teaming with Taz and X-Pac against Jericho and the Dudleys, with Steve Austin shown arriving to the building 45 minutes into the show to a 1.925 rating margin. Booker and Jarrett went 13 minutes in the main event for the vacated title in a match which was turned into a 4 corners 49ers match, with the first one getting the belt from one of 4 boxes wins the title, with the match in a direct turnover from Raw, which had 2 commercial breaks in the quarter, and a Lita vs. Jacqueline backstage brawl, gaining over 900,000 viewers to a peak 2.6 rating to the closest margin on the night from Raw's 4.5. Ending up with the follow-up of last week's angle, with Beetlejuice interfering for the finish, with Booker winning back the title while Scott Steiner attacked him post-match to set him up as the next contender a day before flying to Australia. With Raw able to maintain its viewership after a massive marketing campaign by Viacom to let viewers know about the channel switch, the WWF secondary shows, which went from airing on USA Network to MTV and TNN, took a major hit, with all 3 weekend shows from Superstars to Heat falling to their lowest rated episodes in years, with the company hoping that regular viewers will return to watch the show when the new networks are established in the next few weeks. Raw had a loaded up top of the hour quarter which from now on would become an even bigger potential drawing segment due to WCW no longer going past 10 p.m., opening with a Rock and Rikishi vs Benoit and Kane tag match going 7 minutes ending up with Rock and Rikishi going over, followed by Mick Foley coming out to confront Steve Austin moments later, calling him out to the ring after Austin again interfered in several matches on SmackDown last Thursday, with Foley telling Austin that he understands Austin's problems with authority figures but he needs to realize that he's not Vince McMahon, saying that Austin is free to continue his investigation as long as he's not interfering in matches again before bringing out one of the main suspects which at one point was strongly rumored to legitimately be revealed as the driver in the returning Billy Gunn, making his first appearance back since suffering a major shoulder injury in February, with Gunn the main suspect due to being the only DX member not to be shown on camera during the parking lot skit at Survivor Series 99, telling Austin that the reason he wasn't there was because his flight was delayed in Detroit, revealing that he saw a car driving past him just when entering the building with the driver having blonde hair, with Raw's Big Star Power quarter to open the second hour jumping big with over 50% of the audience watching the Nitro main event switching to TNN with an over 1.8 million viewers spike to the peak quarter of the night 6 rating for the Rock and Rikishi vs Kane and Benoit match followed by the Foley-Austin Gunn segment. After impressing producers in his cameo role for The Mummy in May and signing along with Vince McMahon with talent agency Endeavor a few months back to handle his Hollywood opportunities, Rock signed for his first lead movie role for The Scorpion King during the week with an all-time record contract for an actor in his debut role of around $5.5 million. With Vince, who is going to get an executive producer credit on the film, commenting on Rock's signing, saying that the current plan is for Rock to start shooting after WrestleMania 17 in April, but with optimistic expectations that Rock would still remain a presence on WWF TV during the filming even if in a more limited role, with Rock's house show schedule starting this month on the way to April set to be cut significantly, with the days of him working a full-time road schedule looking to be over due to the now additional commitments, with Vince in a press conference earlier in the day on WWF's Business Report talking about the revenue projections for the company for the year, which is set to break every record in history, noting that first estimates for the Unforgiven pay-per-view buys from last Sunday came in at a huge figure of over 600,000 buys, making it a near all-time record pay-per-view for a non-WrestleMania event, with Raw's main event of Kurt Angle vs Triple H going 8 minutes and the overrun to peak at a 6.1 rating, ending up with Benoit interfering for the finish with Kurt going over to set up Rock vs Angle for the No Mercy pay-per-view, with Raw remaining steady in its second TNN show with another 5.4 rating. A unique broadcast for WCW on October 9 with the first major televised event from Australia, as the show, which was taped 2 days ago to start a huge overseas tour for the company with sold-out crowds for 4 TV tapings and house shows to some of the biggest gates in company history, coming in the middle of endless rumors about a potential sale, with the big talk of the week being the news of an Eric Bischoff-headed group in advanced negotiations to buy WCW from Turner Broadcasting, which would see Eric heading the wrestling company while being backed financially by the Mandalay Sports Group. As with all the uncertainty from the Time Warner-AOL merger, a major factor that would be a make or break in any deal would be WCW retaining the primetime television time slots on TBS and TNT, with Hulk Hogan last week going as far as publicly confirming that the deal is close to be done, with the ramifications of a Bischoff-Hogan return in prominent roles would most likely be the end of Vince Russo as the head of the creative committee, with Russo after staying home when originally scheduled to travel with the crew to Australia with post-concussion symptoms, faxing the rest of the creative team partial scripts for the 4 TV shows while going to 2 Giants vs. Mets baseball games, with Nitro, which started with Rey Mysterio vs. Alex Skipper match, saw a last-minute change as the original script was for a Mysterio vs. Guerrero ladder match, with Russo during the week hyping the match, saying that the two can match the famous Scott Hall vs. Shawn Michaels ladder matches 5 years earlier, as Guerrero, coming back to the hotel with the Filthy Animals group after a night out on Friday, went crazy publicly under the influence of several substances until being arrested when police was forced to be called, putting not only his status for the tour but for the company in general in question. Nitro climbed throughout the first tower, peaking with a 3.4 rating for the second half of the Jindrak and O'Haire vs. Disco and Wright tag titles match, followed by Mark Madden interviewing Stacy Keibler in the ring on the identity of the father to bring out David Flair, with the hour closing with Jeff Jarrett in an old-school early 90s Sting costume coming out for a promo to build their pay-per-view match, playing off the talk of Sting's commitment to the company recently, saying that Sting used to care when he looked like that, unlike the person in the black and white makeup you see today that just goes through the motions, bringing out Sting coming from the roof seconds from 9 p.m. to start a brawl in the crossover quarter, ending with Sting laying out Jarrett. In a match originally set as Cat vs. Sanders in a singles match, Sanders and Cat, both in charge on the night, added a tag partner to bring out Nash and Booker to big reactions from the Australian crowd, going 5 minutes in the majority of the first opposed quarter, as with the unopposed hour ending with a 3.4 rating. Nitro, unlike most shows in the past month, dropped significantly by a massive figure of almost 50% of the audience when Raw went on the air to a 1.9 rating, one of its lowest openings in months. After disrupting the shows for weeks, which saw Mick Foley suspending Steve Austin Thursday on SmackDown, Foley in an appearance on Heat last night which rebounded big to a 2.6 rating from a near all-time low 2 for its debut episode on MTV, guaranteeing to reveal the car driver tonight to open Raw with him again promising to deliver the person, calling out the returning Shawn Michaels in a surprise appearance, asking Michaels about his motives based on his WrestleMania 14 match against Austin, with Austin taking his place at the top, as Michaels looking in his best physical shape since that match in March '98 to again bring up rumors on a return to the ring, dismissed it, saying that he wasn't in the building that night in Detroit, and if he did then he would be back in the company full-time wrestling on top, before suggesting the driver to be someone who loves the spotlight even more than he did at his peak and is now on top of the business, ending the promo asking Foley if he smells what he's cooking, in another hint of Rock being the driver, with the Michaels-Foley segment opening Raw with a 5 rating, its highest rating opening segment so far on TNN. Nitro formatted the second hour to where its biggest stars would make appearances in each of the 4 quarters, with Bill Goldberg coming next to a big ovation in a match against Vito to continue the new streak. But the viewing pattern on the night told a story, as the entire audience was maintained throughout the opposed hour with no bumps or drops at near the 2 rating range, signaling that viewership was down to its core, as pretty much every person watching in the second hour is likely a loyal viewer of the WCW product that is not likely to watch the WWF under normal circumstances, as opposed to the larger audience that would see big gains and drops based on casual interest on the night, as Raw going against the Goldberg match didn't get the normal second quarter jump but instead dipped slightly to a 4.9 for Lita vs. Jacqueline title match. with the company having to tape multiple shows in Australia in a short span, filming 8 hours of television with limited production crew during the tour. The show featured a series of matches more resembling a standalone event for the big crowds rather than an episodic TV program, with Ric Flair appearing next, coming out unannounced after a Mike Awesome vs David Flair hardcore match to bail out David before being powerbombed through a table, followed by the first half of a Storm vs Conan US title match, while Raw, in addition to a Raven vs Blackman match, had Linda McMahon arriving to the building to continue Foley's investigation in the build-up to the reveal, again hinting at Rock as the driver, with Foley asking who benefited the most financially since Austin was taken out. With the company set to tape Thunder on the night by the time this broadcast airs in the US, Nitro still at a 1.9 rating had a Sting vs Scott Steiner main event to close the show, bringing out Jeff Jarrett as the special referee to go 7 minutes, ending up with several interferences from Jarrett to eventually bring out Booker as the second referee to lead to Sting going over in the build to the Booker vs Steiner WCW title match at the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view. With it now being generally known that WCW stopped going past the top of the hour in the past few months to end the overrun segments that were mainly Bischoff's creation during the peak of the Monday Night Wars and later were adopted by McMahon for the next 20 years, Raw, instead of placing its second top match of the night near 10 p.m. started it at the final quarter at 9:45 to go against the Nitro main event, with Triple H and Chris Jericho vs Chris Benoit and X-Pac going 7 minutes to end, with Benoit going over Hunter. As with barely any viewership movements during the hour, Raw picked up slightly to an hour-high 5.2 rating. With Raw facing strong competition to retain its peak run viewership in the fall season with the move to TNN, and the company's secondary shows taking a major hit last weekend on the first week after being moved from USA to 2 new networks, the WWF got positive news last Thursday as SmackDown on October 5 still held at record levels, showing that the massive audience is still there under the right circumstances, as the show, which was built to a loaded second hour featuring a Foley Austin confrontation and a Rock vs Kane WWF title main event, drew a 5 rating with over 8 million viewers in one of the most watched episodes in SmackDown history, with the company hoping to transfer them to tonight with Raw's second hour starting with a Snow vs Test match followed by the breakup angle of Eddie and Chyna, with Eddie mid-match against Try to Censor shown in the shower, as what was supposed to be a big heel turn actually got one of the biggest pops of the night for Eddie from the Anaheim crowd, setting up Billy Gunn being established as a babyface on his return to make the save for Chyna. Unlike previous weeks when the main events would start close to the top of the hour, The Rock and Rikishi vs Kane and Angle tag matches entrances took place earlier than usual, with the match kicking off at 10:52 p.m. to signal that a follow-up segment is coming up, with Foley yet to make his reveal, with the match going 10 minutes to cross over 11 p.m. for the finish, with Rock and Rikishi going over after Kane bailed out on Angle, immediately bringing out Foley, with both Rock and Rikishi in the ring, as Foley again said that all evidence points to Rock as the driver, with it being his rental car, while having the most to gain from eliminating his closest contender to the top spot in the company, about to blame Rock before saying that he found him not guilty, as Foley, who at one point in an interview last week said that he was asked by McMahon on the possibility of him being revealed as the driver to return to the ring to work a program with Austin, officially revealed that Rikishi was the driver to hand him the microphone for the highest-profile promo of his career to date, explaining his reasoning behind it with him seeing Austin in the parking lot and thinking back to all the Samoan dynasty who were major stars in the business but were held back from the top in the WWF, wanting to make sure that it's not happening again with Rock, who at that point in November '99 was already the leading drawing performer in the industry in every business metric for months and was scheduled to go over a heel Austin at WrestleMania 16 to win back the title, bringing up names of the top guys of the past from Rogers to Bruno Backlund and Hogan, which got a big pop from the crowd, with the crowd in general in the building not really knowing how to react to the reveal to Rikishi minutes after teaming with Rock as a babyface, listening to his explanation promo rather than turning on him with major heat that would be expected on paper, with the end of the tag matching the Rock Foley-Rikishi reveal segment jumping over 1 million viewers to peak the night with a 6.4 rating, the highest rated segment so far in the TNN era. With the crew still on the tour in Australia with Nitro, which was taped on Friday night in front of another sold-out crowd in Melbourne, going on the air on Monday with the news breaking during the weekend on Vince McMahon and the WWF becoming the favorites to buy WCW from Turner Broadcasting in a twist that might change the industry forever, as just days after it looked like the Eric Bischoff-headed Mandalay Sports Group would take over the company with the official announcement just a matter of time. The deal ended up falling through with McMahon instead the leading contender to buy the company, with the current talk being that Turner executives want to retain the 4 primetime hours of Nitro and Thunder, which are still some of the most watched on cable television, with the idea that McMahon is the one to most likely oversee a company turnaround and increase their viewership significantly in the near future. And from the WWF's side, the deal would be more possible to finalize as the company has a legal right to match any offer to buy WCW due to a clause in the copyright lawsuit stemming from the debuts of Hall and Nash in the company in mid-96, with the possibility of Vince pretty much completing monopoly of the industry, leading to major buzz either with panic of it being the worst thing for the business or excitement from the possibility of seeing major crossover feuds between the top names in both companies. Nash was out next for commentary saying that the company should bring Scott Hall back as he was drinking for 2 people on the tour in his absence, in what would end up the final on-air mention of Hall as a WCW contractual performer, with Hall being sent his release during the week with a combination of personal issues and a neck injury suffered at the Super Brawl pay-per-view in February, as with the tease of Hall returning getting massive crowd reactions every time it was mentioned, along with his return being perhaps the most asked question for months on the daily WCW Internet audio show. The pay-per-view ended up the final appearance in his WCW run that saw Hall help put the company on the map and take Nitro and in the process the entire industry to the next level on the way to its biggest ever boom period, with Nitro's first hour closing with the match being cut short due to major ankle injury, with Johnny the Bull landing wrong on a monkey flip spot. The Goldberg-Chronic confrontation crossed over the top of the hour to hype up their Halloween Havoc pay-per-view match, with Vince Russo during the week when going over the top matches on the card joking that they might add a special stipulation to the match of the loser being the one who sells first, with the majority of the first opposed quarter seeing a Booker vs. Shane Douglas WCW title match going 9 minutes, with Scott Steiner on commentary being censored on every second sentence on the taped show, cutting a wild promo on Tori Wilson throughout the match after already shooting on her and Kimberly Page in a WCW website audio interview that also had to be heavily edited a few days earlier, with WCW, while not having as big of an unopposed audience as last week, managing to maintain it better on the night to open Nitro with a 2.2 rating, which was also the peak of the show. Raw coming from the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit in perfect timing, coming 6 days from the blow-off match of the Austin Car Attack storyline, with it being the same venue of Survivor Series 99, opened with Eddie Guerrero's follow-up promo on Chyna in a different format after the last few weeks of over 20-minute promo segments, acknowledging it through Jericho's promo, who said that it's time to start the show fast with a match, ending up with it being cut short as less than 20 minutes after Johnny the Bull's injury. Eddie injured his leg from the same exact move, landing awkwardly on the ropes, with the match ending a minute into 4 spontaneous changes to the broadcast opening with a 4.3 rating. Minutes after being bleeped or censored in half his commentary, Scott Steiner was back on the microphone in a backstage interview, with him again being muted throughout, including the other 2 in the interview being bleeped several times in unprecedented amount of censoring during the show that brought up a glimpse of what the company would have to deal with if the show was taped every week and had to go through standards and practices censorship before making the air on a weekly basis. With Goldberg out next, going over David Flair, with Rick on commentary teasing a potential Goldberg-Flair feud, with Raw against it after the lower-than-usual opening picking up over 600,000 viewers for a Rikishi sit-down interview, again explaining his reasoning for running over Austin, saying that he meant everything he said regarding the company holding back his people, and he will make sure Rock stays at the top spot in the company as long as he's in it. With Rock on Thursday responding to the insinuation that he needed Rikishi to take out Austin for him to be the top star in the company, when in reality he was already there months prior to November '99, saying that he would have been in the exact same position he's in now as the #1 guy in the industry if Austin was standing next to him or in front of him in the past year, continuing the subtle build-up for the eventual Rock vs. Austin clash on the way to WrestleMania in April. Nitro had 2 matches in the quarter next, first with Steiner vs. Kidman, followed by Jarrett vs. Conan, while Raw against it having 2 backstage segments of Hunter Angle and Stephanie, and mostly a Snow vs. Regal European title match going 4 minutes, with the quarter between 9:30 to 45 p.m. falling on both shows to the lowest combined viewership of the year with a combined 6.2 rating, as both shows took a major hit on the night with their lowest rated hours on their regular time slots since the Monday Night Tours entered its peak period almost 2 years ago. Nitro's final quarter saw a Sting vs. Nash Lumberjack main event going 7 minutes, and after the 1.7 low of the previous quarter rebounding slightly to a 1.8 rating, as the house show atmosphere of the show, with it being the second taped broadcast in Australia, with the creative crew of Terry Taylor and Johnny Ace reportedly taking the basic structure of the scripts Russo sent and mostly booking the show on the spot, along with the imminent sale of the company signaling that Russo most likely wrote his final WCW show, and with a bigger factor being heavier sports competition on the night, Nitro dropped to its lowest rated regular episode in years with a 2.3 rating. As on the first Monday since the rumors of McMahon buying the company, the numbers on both programs raised questions on if the Monday Night Tours boom is in its final stages. Raw countered the Nitro main event with a Triple H vs. Kane match going 7 minutes to pick Raw over 400,000 viewers back to a 4.7 rating, closing Raw's first hour with a 4.6 rating overall, the lowest rated hour of the show in its original time slot since the show entered its peak run, seeing Benoit interfering for the finish to lay out Hunter and making him tap in the build to their pay-per-view match, with Steve Austin coming out next minutes from the top of the hour placed to open the first unopposed quarter. Austin coming out in the same building of Survivor Series 99 saying that he waited 11 months of rehab to get back to the ring, saying that he's gonna bring everything out on Rikishi to hype up a violent match for Sunday in Austin's official return to the ring in almost a year, cutting an intense promo on Rikishi, who was banned from the building by Foley just as he showed up on screen from the parking lot, calling Austin out to not wait for Sunday to end up with him attempting to run him over again in the same location of the original skit last year, with the Austin-Rikishi segment in a quarter which also featured an X-Pac vs Billy Gunn brawl jumped over 800,000 viewers unopposed to the peak of the night 5.3 rating. With the WWF now established on TNN with the effects of it in terms of where's the selling of the network becoming clear by the week, ECW, after being allowed by the WWF to stay past its original cancellation date on September 22, was officially let go on October 11 with a TNN press release confirming the news, saying that they failed to reach a new agreement with the company despite Vince McMahon originally allowing it to stay on the air until the end of the year, with a potential move to the USA Network now also looks to be off, with a USA spokesperson saying that despite the rumors they had no negotiations with the company, putting the financial state of ECW in major issues, with it now again only having the syndicated hardcore TV program, as while all the headlines went to the potential sale of WCW to McMahon. In-house concerns would come out of this night for the WWF due to the rating results on Monday night. As to put the sharp drop in perspective, Raw's second hour tonight averaged 5.9 million viewers, while a little over a month ago, despite coming back after 2 weeks of preemptions on the USA Network on September 11, Raw's second hour that night averaged over 8.5 million, as while a drop was inevitable with heavier competition in the fall season on a much lower-rated network. The nearly 3 million viewers drop in a month would again raise questions on if the days of targeting all-time record numbers are in the past. Raw's main event of Rock and the Hardys against Angle, Edge and Christian, going 11 minutes crossing into the 8-minute overrun, picked Raw back up over 400,000 viewers to close the show at a 5.1 rating. Ending up with Angle pinning Jeff to go over, with Rock laying out Edge and Christian, with Rock Bottom's post-match to go off the air with a Rock Angle stare down in the build to their title match on Sunday, as with SmackDown still at record-level viewership and pay-per-view buys continuing at all-time high. The company would hope that the rating on the night would have no effect on the No Mercy pay-per-view headlined by the double main event of Rock vs Angle and Austin vs Rikishi to do strong numbers on Sunday. In the first Nitro back in the US and 3 weeks after coming back from the tour in Australia, WCW started its new taping schedule on the night, with both Nitro and Thunder set to be taped on the same night from now on, with Nitro and Thunder Blue Ropes for the first time being aired from 8 to 10, while Thunder will be taped immediately after in front of the same crowd from 10 to 12 in a cost-cutting move that will save the company from renting buildings and advertising Thunder separately, while perhaps increasing ticket sales for Monday nights, with the crowds getting 2 shows for 1 ticket, as with the uncertainty on the state of the company continuing in every department until a sale is confirmed. Nitro, coming 6 days from the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view, saw several promos hyping the top matches, first with a Booker vs Steiner confrontation to end with a pull-apart brawl with Sting and Jarrett, followed by Chronic hyping their handicap match against Goldberg. One of the big talking points of the night coming out of Nitro was Nash seemingly shooting on the company on air for firing Scott Hall last week, with Nash, who was wearing a Hall shirt, in a situation resembling both Hall and Nash wearing Sean Waltman's shirt on TV while he was out with neck injury 3 years earlier, telling WCW that the Outsiders is not a work gimmick and one day they will run again. Nash and the Thrillers group were back out just before the top of the hour, with Nash again bringing up Scott Hall, saying that 4 years ago him and Hall walked into WCW and exemplified what a team was, both as a work and shoot, with them going down in the history books as arguably the greatest tag team of all time, saying that the Thrillers are the future of the business but someone doesn't seem to be a part of this, giving him a challenge to prove himself alone, with Bill Goldberg coming out as his opponent, starting the quick match almost exactly at 9 p.m. with Goldberg going over and cutting a promo hyping the pay-per-view match against Groenick on Sunday, with the Goldberg portion of the quarter lasting less than 3 minutes, with the majority of it featuring a Jindrak and Kidman three-way match to open Nitro with a 1.9 rating. Raw opened with Vince McMahon narrating a video tribute to Yokozuna, who passed away earlier in the day while on a tour in England, as coincidentally with the current WWF storyline bringing up the Samoan family's history in the company. Rodney Noah was one of its biggest names and one of the biggest stars of his generation overall just a few years earlier, with him famously going over Hulk Hogan to win the title in his final WWF match to date, as his cousin Rikishi, who was reportedly given the option to be written off the show after the news came out, decided to work the show with him involved in the two biggest angles coming out of last night, with him getting Austin arrested in his return match followed by him costing Rock the title in the main event, saying that he put Austin in a jail cell before calling out Rock to the ring, saying that he will continue to support him and win back the title, with Rock responding that he knows Rikishi for years but wants nothing to do with him, saying that Rock one day will win back the title but there's no way as he doesn't need his help, leading to Rikishi threatening to reveal some information to end with Rock laying him out with a rock bottom, with the Rock-Rikishi segment opening Raw way above last week, with the joint highest opening quarter in the TNN era drawing a 4.8 rating. Nitro had a commercial-heavy quarter next, resulting in it dropping to a show low 1.6 rating, mostly featuring a video package on the top 3 matches for the Havoc pay-per-view on Sunday, with Booker vs. Steiner, Sting vs. Jarrett and Goldberg vs. Groenick, along with Vampiro making his TV return for a match against Crowbar, while Raw picked up with a Trish vs. Lita match entering Raw into the 5 rating range, as with Nash bringing up Hall's firing twice on TV. Another high-profile release from the company took place on Friday, with Bret Hart being fired due to a 90-day non-compete clause in his contract, with no real chance of a return to the ring in the near future, with Bret a day later in his weekly column responding to the news saying that he's gonna take some time to think about his next move, while posting the release letter sent to him by Brad Siegel as part of the column, noting that WCW is exercising its right to terminate his contract based on his inactivity with post-concussion syndrome, ending Bret's run in the company as a major disappointment compared to the original expectations, with him coming in as one of the hottest performers in the industry, with WCW at its peak for a series of potential big-money programs against a long list of opponents that mostly ended up not happening, with Bret not the only one out with post-concussion syndrome, as Vince Russo, after not flying with the crew to Australia due to the same issue, now at home recovering from a series of blows to the head suffered in the past 4 months, to pretty much also end his run with the company, with the company's creative committee now mostly run by Terry Taylor, Ed Ferrara and Johnny Ace in his absence. After the last 30 minutes of two of the lowest rated quarters in show history drawing a 1.6 rating, Nitro rebounded over 500,000 viewers for the Steiner vs. Awesome main event, seeing Steiner making a memorable entrance with a live Tiger with Booker coming out for commentary in the final build-up to their title match, going 6 minutes with Steiner going over to close the show with a joint head-to-head peak 1.9 rating heading into the pay-per-view Sunday. Raw grew steadily for the first 45 minutes of the show, peaking with a 5.2 rating in the third quarter, featuring a series of backstage interviews and a Chris Benoit vs. Road Dogg match, dropping slightly to a 5 rating to close the hour with a Jericho vs. Regal match while the cameras were waiting for Kurt Angle's arrival in the parking lot, with him entering the Civic Center minutes from 10 p.m. Kurt Angle, less than a year since making his official TV debut last November and earning the company's trust by rapidly improving in every aspect by the week, came out as WWF champion for the first time after going over Raw last night to cement him as a top-tier main event player, with Angle in his title win promo recapping his first year in the business that saw him winning every belt and the King of the Ring tournament on the way to the WWF title win last night, bringing out Mick Foley to congratulate Kurt before swerving him, saying that it's not only the first day of his title reign but also his first title defense, booking him to defend the title in a three-way against Rock and Triple H in the main event in less than an hour, with Angle now with a bigger spotlight on him to draw as champion, starting his run strong with his title win celebration segment, seeing Raw jump over 1.3 million viewers to the peak quarter of the night 6.1 rating. After last week, when it seemed like only a matter of time before Vince McMahon's deal to buy WCW was gonna be officially announced, things got more complicated during the week, with Viacom, the new home for WWF's TV programming, reportedly against McMahon's move, with the idea of a conflict of interest with McMahon running and looking to increase numbers for two primetime TV shows on competing networks for Turner Broadcasting in Nitro and Thunder. As McMahon, besides the usual WWF schedule, will have the upcoming XFL to manage, in addition to a press conference set for Tuesday to announce the company's move to the New York Stock Exchange, having perhaps more on his plate than at any time in history, even without the potential buying of WCW, with 4 more hours of television, opening the door for Eric Bischoff, who is still officially signed to a contract with an undefined role as a consultant, to return to negotiate a potential deal to buy the company. The Rock vs. Triple H vs. Kurt Angle WWF title main event went 9 minutes, crossing into the 8-minute overrun, as after last week's lowest rating of the year, the company responded with a big main event with a proven track record in hopes of rebounding from last Monday, with the Rock Angle Hunter three-way combination. After drawing one of the most watched matches in Raw history in June, followed by them headlining a big SummerSlam pay-per-view in August, proved to be a strong attraction again, with the match jumping to a big 6.6 rating, the highest rated segment so far in the TNN era, driving Raw to its highest rated show since the final week on the USA Network with a 5.5 rating overall, seeing Rock and Hunter having the match won several times before Rikishi interfered for the finish to bring out Austin for his first appearance of the night at 11:07 p.m. to lay out Rikishi and Angle to close the show. Exactly a week after being released from his WCW contract, Bret Hart in his latest Calgary Sun column on Friday officially announced his retirement from wrestling after suffering a series of concussions in a short span between December to January that ended up doing irreversible damage, with Hart still feeling the effects 10 months later, recapping his career while thanking the fans worldwide for their support over the years to confirm that he wrestled his last match, with it being a Nitro main event against Nash on January 10th in what was also ended up by now the highest-rated opposed Nitro segment in over a year, drawing a 4.1 rating, with Bret in an interview following the announcement saying that both WWF and WCW burned the bridge with him and he is not interested in being an on-air character if he can't wrestle, saying that he's 90% recovered from the concussion issues but still sometimes has balance and memory issues, which was evident to him during the talked about confrontation with Bill Goldberg on Thunder last month. Nitro's first hour saw a unique segment with the majority of the roster and production crew, including Booker and Goldberg, coming out to congratulate Hugh Morris on winning the U.S. title, with Goldberg telling Morris that his work in the company and behind the scenes is appreciated by the locker room, while making reference to him being the first opponent in his original winning streak, followed by Goldberg coming back out minutes later to take out Disco and Wright while cutting a promo with a message to the roster saying that he's gonna break his own record and they are all next, closing the hour with a 3.2 rating with the reveal of the new CEO coming next. After the last hour of hype for the reveal, Mike Sanders, who was put in the commissioner position by Russo due to him taking himself off television after his latest concussion a few weeks back, came out to accept the role before Ric Flair made his return as the new CEO 2 minutes from the top of the hour, with Flair, who was last seen on TV being involved in the David Stacey wedding angle and was originally set to be revealed as the father for the payoff, coming out in a new role under the new creative committee in another direction turn that took place between every regime since September of 1999, with Flair telling Sanders that he was 10 years old when he first wrestled for the world title, saying that they have one of the greatest talent pools in history on the roster and it's time to make them work, reinstating Lex Luger as his first move in charge before being confronted by Jeff Jarrett, with the first opposed quarter with the reveal of Flair as the new CEO along with Luger's first promo back against Buff Bagwell saw Nitro opening with its strongest number since the last time Flair made his return on September 11th, drawing a 2.7 rating with only 1.5 rating points separating it from Raw's 4.2 in the closest margin in month. Raw, coming in front of another sold-out crowd of over 14,000 people from the Fleet Center in Boston, saw the company in between the No Mercy pay-per-view last Sunday and the start of the build-up to Survivor Series next week, planning a loaded card for tonight with commercials over the weekend on TNN advertising a double main event of Austin vs Rikishi in a cage match and Rock vs Jericho for a title shot against Kurt Angle on SmackDown Thursday, opening the show with Eddie Guerrero vs Chyna for the IC title. After two shoot unscripted mentions of Scott Hall last week against the company, Nash, who was allegedly told not to mention Hall again, was out on commentary for a Thrillers vs Chronic tag match. And while not mentioning him by name, Nash took a cardboard cutout of Hall from the crowd with the cameras immediately cutting away, followed by the crowd chanting "We want Hall" minutes later, with Nash acknowledging the chant again without mentioning the name, as Nitro, who held its viewership far better than in recent weeks in the first 15 minutes, sharply dropped from the show-high 2.7 rating to a 1.9 in what has become the more normal viewing pattern, while Raw has picked up over 700,000 viewers to a 4.7 rating in a quarter featuring a Hardys vs Right to Censor tag going 5 minutes. With the WCW sale to the WWF story cooling off in the past week with no new updates after it looked like McMahon was the heavy favorite to complete the deal in the near future, Vince publicly commented on the rumors for the first time during the WWF's special event to announce the company's move to the New York Stock Exchange last Wednesday, saying that he needs to be careful with what he says now that they are a public company, but admitting that they have had conversation with Turner about the possibility of buying WCW. With the WWF's launch at the New York Exchange, which saw every major name in the company at the event and a reported massive crowd of almost 10,000 people on the street, signaling another milestone for the company in the current boom period, with Vince McMahon ringing the bell followed by Rock closing the event in a promo saying that the WWF is taking over Wall Street, as both shows stayed steady in the next quarter, with Nitro having a Sanders vs. Cat Angle and Steiner's entrance and pre-match promo for the main event, while Raw saw the continuation of the Rock-Rikishi angle, with Rikishi asking Rock for help in his upcoming match against Austin, with the tease of Rock subtly agreeing to it to continue to hint at a possible Rock turn. Nitro's main event, originally set to be Booker vs. Awesome with Steiner added to the match by Sanders during the show, went 8 minutes to pick back up around 400,000 viewers into the 2 rating range, ending up with Booker retaining after pinning Awesome before calling Steiner back out to set up a rematch between them in the near future after a DQ finish last night, with Nitro mostly on the back of the bigger-than-usual first opposed quarter for the reveal of Flair as the new CEO jumped from the last 2 weeks to a 2.5 rating overall. Rikishi and Austin made their entrances at 9:57 p.m. to cross into the first unopposed quarter, with the match advertised to start at the top of the hour in commercials prior to the show, with Austin walking out in his ring gear in his first TV match back in almost a year and the first match on Raw since a match against Billy Gunn on November 1, 1999. Going 5 minutes in the cage and the Austin-Rikishi feud blow off, with Austin going over clean to close it, with the match opening Raw's second hour jumping over 1.2 million viewers to the peak of the night 5.6 rating. With the negative effects of the move from the USA Network to Viacom now clear a month after the move, the WWF were not the only ones affected, as USA Network, which driven by Raw established itself as the top-rated network on cable television over the past 2 years, dropped significantly from a 2.2 primetime rating average to a 1.7 in the first month without WWF programming, taking the network from number 1 on the cable charts to its lowest rated placing in years at number 5, as the WWF, looking to build on last week's highest rating so far in the TNN era, loaded up the second hour with a top pay-per-view headliners, as in addition to the Austin-Rikishi opening the hour and the Rock-Jericho match set for the main event, Raw in the middle featured a Mick Foley segment bringing back Deborah as his assistant and an impromptu Triple H vs. Kurt Angle match. As with Austin making his in-ring TV return on the night, Austin was also back full-time on the road, with his first house show match taking place 2 days ago in the company's debut at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, headlining the show in front of over 16,000 people with a Rock and Austin vs. Rikishi and Benoit tag match, and with Rock working extra days for months between the full-time wrestling schedule and media appearances in addition to his now Hollywood commitments, Jim Ross confirmed during the week that Rock was taken off all house shows for the rest of 2000, with him unlikely to work many non-televised events on the way to the start of the filming of The Scorpion King in April 2001. Minutes before the main event, Rock and Jericho hyped their match in one of the most memorable promo exchanges of the year, constantly interrupting and using each other's catchphrases, with the match going 7 minutes crossing into an 11-minute overrun, ending up with Rock going over to set up a Rock vs. Angle title match on SmackDown, with the post-match angle seeing Rikishi turning on Rock to reveal that he knew about him running over Austin to build anticipation for Rock's response on Thursday.